Campaign 08 segment tonight. Can a very religious person be elected president of the United States? Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee is a Baptist minister who's running for president on the Republican side. Recently, the governor engendered some controversy when he said this.
Well, let me be very clear. I believe there is a God. I believe there's a God who is active in the creation process. You know, if anybody wants to believe that they are the descendants of a primate, they are certainly welcome to do it.
Now, the latest Republican poll taken by Quinnipiac College has Governor Huckabee at 6%, and he joins us now. Now, as soon as you said, you know, you want to believe you're descended from the primate, all of the evolution people said, hey, he's a primitive. The governor is a primitive. And you answer?
Oh, I answer that I represent 90% of the American people who believe God was involved in the creation.
But most of us, and I believe God was involved in the creation too, believe that there was a evolutionary process.
There well could have been. A wonderful book by Dr. Francis Collins, the guy that headed the Genome Project, called The Language of God. I read it recently. He's an evolutionist. He's also a very devout evangelical Christian. But I just have to come to the conclusion that when people put me on the spot and say, do you believe in evolution? Yes or no? I'm going to say, if you're asking me in the macro sense, then the answer is no, because what you're asking me is it just happened all by itself without the intervention of God. Well, but that's the way it was phrased, and that's what I'm never going to
But look, you know what the secularists are going to run wild with. That you're a nut. You're a Baptist minister. You're an evangelical. If you ever get elected president, you're going to oppose this on the country. You're anti-Darwinism.
Well, you know, Bill, I was a Baptist minister, but I was also a governor for 10.5 years and a lieutenant governor for 3 years.
But in Arkansas, that's not San Francisco.
Doesn't matter where it is. Well, doesn't matter where it is. The point is I've got a record of governing, building roads and improving schools and health. But what I'm saying is people make it like, well, you've just jumped from, I preached a sermon last Sunday and baptized a bunch of people, and now I'm decided, by golly, I'm going to run for president. It's not quite like that.
I understand. I understand as I'm on your side. But I also understand that if you indicate that you don't believe that we're descended from primates, that you're going to have a hard time because they're going to brand you. They're going to brand you, and they already have. And I don't know how you fight that. But I want to get this clear. Do you believe in Adam and Eve? Do you think Adam and Eve were around?
Yeah, I think they were
a real person, Adam and Eve?
I have no reason to doubt that.
But so you believe that God just said, okay, here's the man, and we'll take his rib, and there's he, and then everybody evolved from there.
I said that night with Wolf Blitzer, I don't know how he did it. Honestly, don't know how long it took. Wasn't there. Couldn't give you the details, but I just believe he did it. And so, you know, if it turns out that, you know, that I'm wrong, I've lost nothing. Turns out I'm right, it's a good thing.
Okay.
By the way, speaking of right and wrong, you owe Dick Morris.
No, I don't.
A dinner. Oh,
because that was a tracking poll. What the governor is referring to is that he hit 10% in the tracking poll. Congratulations for that.
12.8, but there you go.
It's around 5-6 now. But if that ever gets over into, you know, one of these polls, I will definitely have Morris for dinner. All right, now, Governor Romney is a very conservative individual, as are you, and Thompson is conservative as well. So you three are fighting for the conservative vote. Romney is a Mormon. Is that impacting his campaign, that religious belief?
I don't think so.
You don't think any Americans are?
I think there will be some, just like being a Baptist is going to impact some folks for me. I always tell the story of a lady who asked me, was I a narrow-minded Baptist that think only Baptists go to heaven? And I told her, no, ma'am, I'm more narrow than that. I don't think all the Baptists are going to make it either. So, you know, I know that it's going to be an issue for him. It's going to be an issue for me. The most important thing that we can do is to be honest about our faith. I'm going to be honest about mine, tell people how it influences me, how it affects me. That's important.
But a lot of evangelicals say you can't get to heaven unless you believe in Jesus. And if you're president, I mean, you're going to tell Jewish Americans and Muslim Americans you ain't going to heaven?
You know, that's not the role of the president to tell people about going to heaven or hell.
That's true.
The role of the president is to lead this country and to improve the tax situation, secure our borders, to give us a sense of peace and safety, and let people believe whatever they want to believe.
But do you think the voters have a right to know about your religious beliefs?
Oh, absolutely.
You do?
I do. And
now, do you believe that Jewish and Muslim Americans aren't going to heaven because they don't believe in Jesus as God?
I think that's going to be, you know, something they'll deal with. But again, it's not the role of the president to start telling
but do you believe
people.
That?
Do I believe that people
who don't believe Jesus is God can get to heaven?
I believe Jesus is the way to heaven. That's what the Scripture teaches. Again, if somebody else has a different belief and they figure out how to get there apart from that, that's the only way I know how to get there.
All right, so you say that you're secure in your own beliefs, but you're not telling anybody else that they are or not going to heaven.
That's not my job. My job is to make sure I make it on my convictions.
And you're not telling anybody else that they're not descended from primates.
They can believe whatever they want to. That's the joy of this country. I love America because People have a right to believe things that are polar opposite. I just want them to be honest about it. I'm much happier with a person who tells me he's an atheist and he's being honest about it than a person who tells me he's a Christian but he doesn't live like one.
Last
the ones
question.
who bother me the most are the ones who say they're Christians but then they don't live like it at all.
If you were elected president, would you try to get prayer back in school?
You know, I would make sure that students could pray. I don't want the government telling a child to pray or forcing them or writing the prayer for them. But I think that if a student has basic convictions, you shouldn't prohibit or limit the
So
student
that they should have a
from praying.
space and a time when they can, if they want to.
I don't know if a student ever took an algebra test that didn't do some praying.
All right, there you go, Governor Huckabee, and we're pleased to be talking to you, Governor. You're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening. Dennis Miller will run down the Democratic candidates.